Cognitive interview. The cognitive interview is a scientifically validated method used mainly with witnesses and victims to maximize memory recall. Instead of yes-no questions, the interviewer guides the subject through multiple memory retrieval strategies, such as mentally recreating the scene, recalling events from different perspectives, and remembering sensory details like sounds and smells. Research shows this method significantly increases the amount of accurate information recalled without increasing false details, because it works with how human memory naturally reconstructs experiences.
Kinesic interviewing. Kinesic interviewing focuses on nonverbal behavior, body language, gestures, posture, micro-movements to inform the questioning strategy. Investigators first establish a baseline of normal behavior, then look for deviations when crime-relevant questions are asked. The interview unfolds in phases like orientation, narration, cross-examination, and resolution, each tailored to the subject's reactions. Rather than relying on a single tell, interrogators look for patterns that suggest discomfort or concealment.
Brain fingerprinting, BEOSP or EEG memory profiling. Brain fingerprinting is a neuroscience-based deception detection method that uses EEG sensors to measure brainwave responses when the subject sees crime-related stimuli. If the suspect's brain exhibits specific recognition patterns, a P300 or murmur response, it suggests the individual recognizes details only a perpetrator would know, even if they don't verbally admit them. This technology is non-invasive and based on how the brain processes familiar information.
Strategic use of evidence, SUE. Instead of confronting a suspect with all evidence at once, SUE carefully times the disclosure of facts. Interviewers start by letting the suspect provide an unpressured narrative, then gradually introduce pieces of evidence that contradict that story. The goal isn't to threaten, but to create situations where the suspect must reconcile their account with facts in ways that can reveal deception or truth. Wicklander-Zulawski non-confrontational method. The WZ method rejects traditional aggressive interrogation. It emphasizes rapport, respect, and ethical questioning to coax information. Interviewers build a comfortable environment, ask non-threatening questions, and simply encourage subjects to talk. The idea is that respect and calm pressure often produce more honest disclosures than coercion or intimidation.
Open-ended narrative elicitation. This technique moves away from factual drilling and instead asks the subject to tell their story uninterrupted. The interviewer uses broad prompts like, "Tell me what happened from the beginning," and listens without correction. This approach often uncovers unexpected details and reduces the risk of leading or influencing answers.
Forced choice questions. Rather than direct accusations, interviewers present two possibilities, each implying involvement, forcing the subject to choose. For example, did you leave the house before or after the other person arrived? Either choice reveals timeline information and can corner deceptive narratives into contradictions. Baseline behavior establishment. This method begins with neutral, non-crime questions, favorite food, daily routines, hobbies, to establish how the subject typically speaks and behaves. Later, deviations from this baseline during crime-focused questions can be telling. It's a key part of many behavioral analysis methods, even though research highlights limitations of relying solely on nonverbal cues.
Chronological reconstruction. Suspects are asked to reconstruct events in chronological order with specificity, minute by minute. This approach highlights gaps and inconsistencies in fabricated timelines, making it harder for deceptive stories to hold under pressure.
Context change technique. Moving an interview from a formal room to a more relaxed environment, a lounge, a hallway, even a car, can reduce stress and defensiveness. This real or perceived reduction in pressure helps interviewees feel less on guard, potentially revealing more genuine responses. Emotional labeling is a technique where an interviewer identifies and names a person's emotional state. I can see this makes you frustrated.
By acknowledging emotions without judgment, the subject may feel understood and more willing to elaborate authentically. Rapport-building techniques. Rapport building isn't just friendliness. It's a structured approach of establishing trust, showing empathy, and finding common ground. Research on modern interrogation emphasizes rapport as crucial for accurate information gathering rather than coercion.
Scharf technique. Similar to rapport methods, it involves creating an illusion that the interviewer already knows the case, then gently probing without direct confrontation. It uses a friendly approach, selective confirmations, and careful silence to encourage suspects to fill in gaps with their own words.
Open versus closed question alternation. Strategic switching between open-ended questions like "what happened next" and closed ones like "were you at the scene" makes it harder for suspects to maintain scripted or deceptive answers. The contrast prevents rehearsed responses and exposes inconsistencies.
Silence utilization. After asking a question and receiving a brief answer, the interviewer intentionally remains silent while maintaining eye contact or a steady posture. Humans instinctively fill silence, often expanding answers beyond their original intent.
Progressive summarization. Periodically summarizing the suspect's answers back to them. So, first you said X, forces the subject to hear their own words and either confirm, correct, or elaborate. This can prompt additional details that might not emerge otherwise.
Moral or ethical appeals. Rather than threats, the interrogator appeals to the suspect's conscience, concerns for family, or personal values. People are worried about the victims. You can help them get closure. Such appeals can prompt truthful disclosures from those motivated by empathy rather than fear.
Alternative scenario framing. Instead of asking if a suspect committed a crime, investigators present plausible scenarios and ask which fits best. This subtle framing makes it easier for suspects to open up without feeling cornered.
Closed-loop verification. Interrogators ask a question, receive an answer, and immediately verify that answer against known facts before moving on. This constant cross-checking keeps suspects from slipping into comfortable fabricated narratives.
Forced recall in reverse order. Asking suspects to recount events backwards from end to beginning increases cognitive load and disrupts rehearsed lies. Truthful accounts are easier to narrate in reverse because they are grounded in real memory structures.
Behavioral pattern tracking. Instead of focusing only on individual cues, investigators monitor patterns of speech, hesitation, pacing, and response length across an entire interview. Longitudinal tracking of these metrics can reveal trends consistent with deception or truth.
Science-based interviewing principles. Rather than coercive tactics, science-based interviewing emphasizes ethical, evidence-supported practices that build rapport, minimize false confessions, and gather reliable information. These methods are grounded in decades of psychological research, showing that non-coercive, open-ended approaches are more accurate than intimidation and pressure.
Confrontation with contradictions. Once a suspect is told part of their story, the interrogator presents specific contradictions between prior statements and known evidence, forcing the suspect to explain discrepancies rather than repeat a rehearsed script.
Controlled questioning technique. By deliberately slowing down or speeding up the tempo of questioning, interviewers can disrupt a suspect's thought process, making it harder to maintain deceptive narratives while encouraging spontaneous truth-telling.
Mendez Principles Framework. Rather than a single technique, this is a global set of principles that guide effective, ethical interrogation and interviewing. It emphasizes science, law, ethics, and human rights in gathering accurate information, setting a professional standard for investigators worldwide. Instead of coercion or confession-first goals, it supports structured, transparent interviewing, anchored in established research and best practices.